This content is produced by PASS the CSLB, an independent audio-first study companion for busy California B general candidates. I build these lessons from official CSLB study guide topics and reputable source-backed California materials so you can study on the go. This is exam prep reinforcement, not legal, professional, engineering, or job-specific advice. Exam content is set by PSI and the CSLB and may change, so always verify current requirements against official CSLB materials. No exam outcome is guaranteed. Now let's get into it. A volatile organic compound problem can be invisible while the paperwork problem is sitting in plain sight. A wall may look smooth, the color may match, and the finish may appear complete. But if the container used in the field cannot be matched to compliant manufacturer information, the project is not ready for verification. That is the central point I want you to remember. The clipboard must match the can. The clipboard represents the approved product information. The can represents what the crew actually opened and applied. When those two records separate, the general building contractor loses control of a compliance decision that may not be visible after the finish dries. This is why volatile organic compound documentation is not clerical cleanup at the end. It is part of finished trade supervision. The practical field choice is to stop an unreviewed substitution before application, confirm the correct product category and limit, and preserve the matching verification record. That short pause is much easier than trying to reconstruct chemical compliance after surfaces are finished and containers disappear. The California Green Building Standards Code is a mandatory part of California law. It is found in Title 24, Part 11. It is not the same thing as a voluntary third-party rating program. A project may pursue an optional green certification, but that does not turn the California Green mandatory measures into a marketing choice. For this lesson, the important boundary is that California Green governs volatile organic compound requirements for architectural paints, coatings, adhesives, sealants, and caulks. Residential and non-residential provisions organize the requirements in different chapters, but a general building contractor still has to coordinate compliant materials and the evidence needed for verification. The published Contractors State License Board study outline identifies painting, staining, coating, and interior wall covering as finished trade material. This topic also connects to scope, code compliance, specifications, field inspection, coordination, personnel safety, and environmental safety. That does not predict a particular question. It explains why the subject belongs in serious general building preparation. I also want you to separate the statewide baseline from local enforcement. For adhesives, sealants, and caulks, the applicable local or regional air pollution control rule can be more stringent. The contractor should confirm the rule that applies to the actual project, instead of assuming that a memorized statewide number settles every job. California Green requires verification when the enforcing agency requests it. The source-backed methods at the heart of this lesson are manufacturer specifications and field verification of product containers. That means the record is not complete merely because someone typed low volatile organic compound into a submittal log. I put the verification sequence on screen because the order matters. First, identify the proposed product, its intended use, and the regulatory category that fits that use. Second, compare the proper manufacturer value with the applicable limit. Third, approve and retain the product record. Fourth, when the material reaches the job site, match the manufacturer, product, and formulation on the physical container to the approved information. Finally, present the matching records and containers when the enforcing agency requests verification. The vulnerable point is substitution. Imagine a painting crew that runs short near closeout. A supplier has another flat paint in the same color and sheen, and the crew wants to keep moving. The substitute may look interchangeable to the eye, but color and appearance do not establish chemical compliance. The contractor should pause the substitution, obtain the applicable manufacturer information, compare the regulatory value with the correct limit, and update the approved record before the product is used. That scenario is hypothetical, but the control decision is practical. Once the substitute is applied, the visible finish does not tell the inspector which formulation was used. The documentation becomes the evidence for an invisible material characteristic. I think of the paperwork as part of the finish assembly because, For verification purposes, the installed work and its product identity have to stay connected. A safety data sheet may support the file when it contains the needed product and regulatory information, and it has a separate hazard communication role for hazardous chemicals. But do not assume that the mere presence of a safety data sheet proves the coating meets the correct category limit. Read the value, confirm what that value means, and match it to the actual container. Paint and coating limits are organized by category. For the basic gloss categories in the California Green tables, a flat coating has a maximum volatile organic compound regulatory content of 50 grams per liter. A non-flat coating has a maximum of 100 grams per liter. A non-flat high gloss coating has a maximum of 150 grams per liter. The chart also shows why a contractor should not force every coating into the flat or non-flat row. Specialty coatings have their own categories and limits. The supported examples here are 250 grams per liter for industrial maintenance coating, 350 for wood preservative, 420 for high temperature coating, and 730 for clear shellac. Those larger numbers do not mean that a crew may simply call a product specialty coating. The product must actually fit the applicable category. The field task is classification before comparison. Identify what the coating is and how it is being used, locate the governing category, and then compare the proper regulatory value. Comparing a valid product number with the wrong table row is still a bad compliance decision. Here is a clean way to remember the architecture. For ordinary coatings, start with gloss category. For a genuine specialty coating, start with the specialty definition. Then compare like with like. Do not shop for the largest number on the page. Suppose a product sheet lists 45 grams per liter of volatile organic compound regulatory content for an interior flat coating. Against the applicable 50 gram per liter flat limit, that value is within the limit. Now suppose the sheet lists 90 grams per liter for the same category. The color can still be perfect, but the listed value is not within that flat coating limit. The category and the regulatory number control the comparison, not the crew's visual opinion. Adhesives, sealants, and caulks follow a different regulatory path. California Green points to the applicable air pollution control requirements in the South Coast Air Quality Management District adhesive and sealant framework with the more stringent, applicable local or regional rule, controlling where required. Adhesive limits depend heavily on the application and the substrates being bonded. The California Green table gives 50 grams per liter for drywall and panel adhesive, indoor carpet adhesive, and subfloor adhesive. It gives 100 grams per liter for wood flooring adhesive. For substrate-specific bonding, it gives 30 grams per liter for metal to metal and 30 for wood to wood, while fiberglass bonding is allowed up to 80 grams per liter. One easily confused exception concerns dissimilar substrates. If one adhesive bonds two different substrates, the highest applicable volatile organic compound limit for those substrates is permitted. Consider a hypothetical bond between wood and fiberglass. The supported wood to wood limit is 30 grams per liter, and the fiberglass limit is 80. For that dissimilar substrate comparison, the higher applicable limit is 80. My memory phrase is, highest limit wins the tie. Keep the boundary attached to it. The phrase applies when one adhesive bonds dissimilar substrates under this rule. It does not automatically approve product performance, ignore manufacturer instructions, override approved plans, or erase a more specific applicable requirement. There is also a separate content restriction. California Green identifies chloroform, ethylene dichloride, methylene chloride, perchloroethylene, and trichloroethylene as prohibited compounds in the covered adhesives and sealants. A product is not acceptable merely because its total volatile organic compound number falls below a table limit. Both the applicable limit and the prohibited content rule matter. Aerosol products are a common classification trap because the familiar grams per liter comparison may be the wrong tool. Small aerosol paints, adhesives, and caulks that weigh no more than 1 pound and contain no more than 16 fluid ounces are regulated through product-weighted maximum incremental reactivity limits under Title 17. That measure addresses the ozone-forming reactivity of the product mixture instead of using the ordinary liquid coating table comparison. The comparison chart separates the main paths. A standard liquid architectural coating follows the applicable coating category and regulatory value. An adhesive, sealant, or caulk requires the applicable use, substrate, and air district limit. A qualifying small aerosol product follows the aerosol reactivity requirement. An architectural coating container with a capacity of 1 liter or less is generally exempt from the standard table limits. An exemption from a standard table is not a free pass from every rule. The contractor still has to verify that the product actually fits the exception and satisfies every other applicable requirement. The safer mental habit is not to ask, is this product low volatile organic compound? Ask, which compliance path applies to this exact product, package, and use. Manufacturer information can show both volatile organic compound actual and volatile organic compound regulatory values. They are not interchangeable. The actual value uses the total material volume in its concentration calculation after removing water and exempt compounds from the volatile weight. The regulatory value also removes water and exempt compounds from the volume used in the denominator. Because that denominator becomes smaller, the regulatory value will be equal to or higher than the actual value. The regulatory number is the one compared with the California Green coating table limits described in this lesson. Imagine a product record that displays an actual value of 25 grams per liter and a regulatory value of 45. If the applicable category limit is 50, the correct comparison uses 45, not 25. Choosing the smaller number because it looks better is not conservative estimating. It is comparing the wrong measurement. I would not turn this into a chemistry exercise for a general building field decision. I would remember one distinction. Actual describes one way of calculating the material's volatile content. Regulatory is the table comparison value. When both appear, read the label carefully enough to know which one you are approving. The same product file also connects environmental compliance with worker safety. Under California hazard communication requirements, employers must keep accessible safety data sheets for hazardous chemicals in the workplace. Those sheets communicate chemical hazards and safe handling information. When a sheet also carries the product value needed for volatile organic compound verification, it can support the compliance record, but the product identity still has to match the container. Spray application adds immediate ventilation controls. California occupational safety rules require mechanical ventilation to operate continuously during spray coating operations and continue long enough afterward to keep flammable vapors below 20% of their lower explosive limit. The spray checklist adds 2 more controls. Exhaust from the spray operation is not to be recirculated into the work environment, and safe arrangements for makeup air must be provided. Other exposure controls and respiratory protection requirements can also apply. The 20% threshold is not permission to ignore those separate duties. This is another place where similar documents serve different purposes. California Green product verification addresses whether the finished material follows the applicable environmental requirement. Hazard communication addresses worker access to chemical hazard information. Spray ventilation addresses the atmosphere created during application. One file may support more than one task, but one task does not replace another. The practical consequence is direct. A contractor can select a coating that meets the listed volatile organic compound limit and still supervise the spray operation incorrectly. Material compliance does not make an unsafe application method safe. I want you to keep product compliance, documentation, and work practice controls connected without collapsing them into one checkbox. For field control, I would use a simple product register before finish work begins. For each covered material, record the manufacturer, exact product, intended use, applicable category, regulatory value or other governing measure, supporting manufacturer document, and approval status. This is a management method, not a claim that California requires one particular binder format. At delivery, compare the physical container with that register. During work, make the substitution rule clear to every foreman. No replacement paint, adhesive, sealant, or aerosol goes into use until its compliance path and documentation are reviewed. Before the enforcement visit, audit the records against the containers that are available for field verification and confirm any stricter local requirement with the enforcing agency. I want to close the technical lesson with 4 decisions. First, treat California Green as mandatory code, not an optional certification. Second, match manufacturer information to the product actually used. Third, classify the product before comparing its number. Fourth, keep material compliance separate from hazard communication and spray safety. The central memory connection is still the shortest. The clipboard must match the can. If a proposed substitution breaks that match, stop before application and rebuild the verification chain. For this specific episode, I made an audio practice quiz so you can work through the same field decisions instead of only hearing them once. It is audio-based. The questions are read aloud, and you answer by tapping, which is useful when you are studying while working or otherwise on the go. Go to the description below this video. You will see a link that says Pass the CSLB. Tap it. It will take you straight there. If anything in this lesson is still unclear, comment below with your question, and I will use it to help you. Subscribe so you can stay on track through every episode until you get your license. I know this process takes discipline, and I want each lesson to move you one clear step closer.